darkness, truths unravel. Welcome to Dark Room Narratives, where every story leaves a shadow. Welcome to the chilling journey of Whispers of the Great Lakes. In this forest, Jack and Emma fight for survival. Get ready for a thriller!
The air in the Great Lakes forest hung heavy with moisture as Jack and Emma set up camp near Lake Huron. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of pink across the sky, but the woods had already slipped into twilight. They'd come to escape the city's chaos, bringing only a pickup truck, a tent, and minimal gear. Jack, with a rifle slung over his shoulder, scouted the perimeter, his eyes scanning the trees, while Emma stoked a campfire. Her hands trembled from the chill, but she smiled as the flames flickered to life. "You sure it's safe here?" she asked, glancing at the dense pines encircling them. Jack nodded, though his ranger instincts hinted otherwise. "It's wilderness, Em. But we're prepared." They pitched the tent, securing ropes to logs, when a faint crack echoed from the brush. Jack grabbed his rifle, his heart pounding. "Just a deer," he said, but his voice was tight. The campfire crackled, casting shadows on the trees. Emma pulled out a knife to slice food when she spotted something in the bark of a nearby pine, a fresh gash, deep and jagged. "Jack, look," she whispered, pointing. He approached, touching the wound with his fingers. "Someone's been here," he muttered. In that moment, an arrow whistled from the dark, striking a log inches from his hand. Its black fletching quivered, a note tied to it. Jack unfolded it, his hands shaking. "Leave or die," it read in uneven scrawl. Emma gasped, her eyes widening with fear. "Who's this?" she whispered. Jack raised his gaze, scanning the woods. The shadows seemed thicker, the trees taller. He gripped his rifle, a chill running down his spine. "I don't know. But we're not alone." They gathered their gear, leaving the fire burning to ward off animals. Jack reinforced the perimeter with logs, while Emma grabbed a knife and axe from the truck. Fog began creeping over the ground, obscuring tracks. Another arrow struck a tree, this time closer, its black fletching gleaming in the firelight. Another note with the same words appeared. "He's toying with us," Jack said, his voice hoarse. Emma clutched the axe, her breath quickening. The forest seemed to listen, its silence oppressive. They retreated to the tent, bracing for the night, but the feeling of being watched never left. Somewhere in the dark, someone waited, and the game had just begun. The fog thickened, enveloping the camp near Lake Huron as Jack and Emma prepared for the night. The campfire burned low, casting a faint glow on the log barricades they'd built around the tent. 2 arrows with black fletching protruded from trees, their leave or die notes fluttering in the breeze. Jack held his rifle, eyes fixed on the forest's edge, while Emma stood beside him, axe in hand, her knuckles whitening with tension. "This isn't random," Jack said, his voice low. "Someone knows we're here." Emma nodded, her gaze lingering on fresh gashes in the trees, deep cuts appearing hourly. "A local hunter, maybe," she ventured, but her tone was uncertain. Jack shook his head. "Too methodical. He's testing us." They set a simple trap, a string with a pebble-filled can, strung between trees. If someone approached, it would alert them. Jack checked his rifle, while Emma took a knife, keeping the axe ready. The fog hid the forest, but the sensation of unseen eyes grew stronger. Suddenly, the can rattled, and they spun around. Shadows shifted, but nothing was visible. Another arrow whistled, striking a log near Emma. She flinched, her cry escaping. Jack fired toward the sound, but the bullets only tore through the mist. "He's playing with us," he muttered, hands trembling with anger. Emma picked up the arrow, noting the note was fresh, the ink still glistening. They fortified the camp, adding more logs and branches. They kept the fire alive, tossing in dry wood to hold back the dark. But the forest felt alive, trees swayed without wind, shadows merged into one. Jack set another trap, this time with a tripwire. Emma stood guard, her eyes searching for movement. The wire snapped, and a branch crashed to the ground. Jack lunged forward but saw only boot prints vanishing into the fog. "He's close," he whispered. Emma gripped the axe, her breathing quickened. The forest held its breath, and in that moment, they knew their night would be a test. The fog over the camp near Lake Huron grew nearly impenetrable as Jack and Emma planned their next move. The campfire dimmed, casting weak flickers on the log barricades and the pebble-can tripwire meant to signal danger. 2 black-fletched arrows protruded from trees, their leave-or-die notes trembling in the wind. Jack, rifle at the ready, stood watch, his eyes piercing the mist, while Emma, axe in hand, checked the traps. "He won't give up," Emma said, her voice quiet but strained. Jack nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we'll be ready. He thinks we're weak." They added another pebble-can string between pines and placed knives near the tent. The fog concealed the forest, but the feeling of being watched became unbearable. Suddenly, the can rattled, and they froze. Jack raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. An arrow whistled from the dark, striking a log beside him, splintering the wood. Emma jumped back, her cry breaking free, but she quickly grabbed the axe. "He's there," she whispered, pointing into the brush. Jack fired, but bullets only shredded the mist. Shadows moved, and it seemed the forest laughed. They retreated to the tent, reinforcing it with logs. Jack checked the strings, while Emma added another trap, a wire with a tin can. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop. "We have to hold out till dawn," she said, her voice trembling. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady. "We'll make it." But the forest wouldn't relent. Another arrow struck a tree, this time closer to the tent. The note with the same words appeared again, but the ink was fresh, as if written moments ago. Jack picked up the arrow, his eyes narrowing. "He's hurting us," he muttered. Emma gripped the axe, her breath growing ragged. The fog thickened, and in that moment, they realized the trap had already closed. The fog in the Great Lakes forest thickened like a wall as Jack and Emma left the camp, searching for an escape. The campfire behind them had died, its faint embers lighting their path. 2 black-fletched arrows with leave-or-die notes jutted from trees, a constant reminder of the threat. Jack held his rifle ready, eyes scanning the mist, while Emma, axe in hand, limped from exhaustion. "We can't just run," Jack said, his voice hoarse. "We need to find where he's coming from." Emma nodded, her gaze catching fresh gashes on trees leading deeper into the woods. "What if it's a trap?" she asked, but her tone was insistent. Jack didn't answer, only moved forward, following boot prints in the damp soil. The path led to a narrow ravine, its moss-covered walls slick and looming. The fog grew denser, hiding the top. Jack stepped ahead when the ground gave way under Emma. A net of stones sprang up, snaring her legs. She screamed, collapsing to her knees, blood seeping through her jeans. "Jack," she called, her voice shaking. Jack rushed to her, pulling out his knife. He cut the ropes, his hands trembling with effort. Emma broke free, her ankle bruised but intact. "He's hurting us," she whispered, her eyes blazing with anger. Jack looked up, spotting a black-fletched arrow lodged in a tree. A note was tied to it with a new word, "No escape." They backed against the ravine wall, preparing for the next move. The fog hid the forest, but the sensation of being watched intensified. Jack checked his rifle, while Emma gripped the axe. "He's out there," he said, his voice tense. Emma nodded, her breathing heavy. The ravine seemed to close in, and in that moment, they knew their fight had just begun. The air in the Great Lakes forest grew heavy, the faint hum of a taut bowstring fading into the night. Jack crouched, rifle in hand, his gaze locked on the tree line where a shadow had vanished. Emma clutched the knife he'd given her, the axe slung over her shoulder, her face a mix of fear and resolve. The note, "No escape," lay crumpled at their feet, its words a taunt fueling their determination. "We can't wait for him to pick us off," Jack whispered, his voice raspy. "We find him first." Emma's eyes widened. "Find him? Jack, he's like a ghost out there. We don't even know where to start." But Jack was already moving, scanning the ground for boot prints. Fresh gashes on trees, arrows, notes, it was all part of a game to keep them on edge. He refused to be prey. "He's human, Em. He leaves tracks. We use that." He pointed to faint impressions leading into the brush, their edges sharp in the wet soil. They gathered what they could carry: rifle, axe, knives, a flashlight, and a flare from the truck's emergency kit. The fire had nearly died, its embers offering no warmth against the cold. Jack led, his flashlight cutting through the fog. Emma stayed close, knife ready, flinching at every rustle. The forest seemed to shift around them, pines towering, their branches clawing at the sky. A sharp scent grew stronger, mingling with a metallic tang, like old blood. They followed the tracks 20 yards until they stopped at a small clearing. Jack knelt, studying the ground. The prints didn't continue, instead, a faint scrape suggested something had been dragged. "He's covering his trail," he muttered. Emma held her breath, spotting a fresh gash on a tree, sap oozing like a wound. Above, another black-fletched arrow gleamed under the moon. No note, just one word carved into the bark: "Run." Before they could react, the ground beneath Jack gave way, a hidden pit covered with branches and leaves. He fell, clutching the edge, the rifle clattering below. Emma lunged, grabbing his arm, her axe dropping. "Jack," she gasped, pulling with all her strength. He climbed out, dirt smeared across his face, breathing hard. The pit was shallow but lined with sharpened stakes, meant to wound, not kill. A trap. The hunter wasn't just watching, he was driving them. A soft laugh echoed through the trees, closer than before. Jack retrieved the rifle from the pit, ignoring the scratches on his hands. "He's leading us somewhere," he said, his voice tight with rage. Emma picked up the axe, her hands trembling. Why not finish it? Why these games? Jack had no answer, but the metallic scent grew, the air crackling like before a storm. They backed from the pit, staring into the dark. Another whistle, and an arrow grazed Jack's shoulder, tearing his jacket. He cursed, raising the rifle, but the shadows offered no target. The laugh returned, now from another side, mocking. Emma swung the flashlight, catching a flicker, possibly a bough, before it vanished. "There," she shouted, but the figure was gone. The forest closed in, trees with gashes like scars. They were deep in the hunter's game, and the rules were his. The forest around Lake Huron pulsed with menace, its shadows twisting under the weak moonlight. Jack's shoulder burned where the arrow had grazed, his torn jacket sticky with blood. He ignored the pain, rifle in hand, eyes darting between the gashed trees. Emma gripped the axe, her knuckles white, breath ragged after the pit trap. The word "run" carved into the bark taunted them, but there was no escape, the hunter controlled their every step. "We can't just react," Jack said quietly, but with resolve. "We turn his game against him." Emma glanced into the dark, fear giving way to a spark of defiance. "How?" "He's always one step ahead." Jack crouched, examining the disturbed earth near the pit. The hunter had hidden his tracks, but not perfectly, a faint scratch led into the thicket. "He's guiding us, but he's not invisible," Jack said. "We set our own trap." He grabbed the flare, its red glow a potential signal, or weapon. Emma nodded, understanding. "We lure him out," she said, her voice hardening. They moved cautiously, leaving the pit behind, following the scratch through the pines. The air grew colder, the metallic scent sharper, blending with damp earth. Jack tied the flare to a low branch, rigging a tripwire to trigger it if disturbed. Emma scattered leaves to conceal the setup, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "If he trips it, we'll see him," she whispered. They retreated to a ridge, hiding behind a fallen log, rifle and axe at the ready. The forest's silence pressed down, the feeling of unseen eyes intensifying. Minutes dragged like hours. Then, a soft crack, a branch snapping underfoot. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle, pulse thundering. The flare flashed, a red burst lighting the woods, but it died quickly. "He's there," Emma hissed, pointing to the brush. But no one emerged. Instead, a low hum filled the air, the vibration of a bowstring. An arrow whistled, striking a log near Jack's head. He ducked, cursing, while Emma swung the flashlight. The beam caught a glint, perhaps the hunter's bow, before it vanished. He saw the trap, Jack growled, frustration boiling. The hunter wasn't just skilled, he read them, anticipated them. Emma's face hardened. "Then we're faster." They abandoned the ridge, pushing through the trees, the flashlight beam jittering. The scratches led to a narrow ravine, its walls steep and moss-slick. Jack hesitated, sensing a trap, but another arrow struck a tree behind them, urging them on. The bark bore a new word, closer, the letters fresh, oozing sap. They descended into the ravine, the air thick with fog. The ground was uneven, strewn with rocks and roots. Emma's foot caught on something, a taut wire in the dirt. A net of stones sprang up, snaring her legs. She screamed, dropping the axe, thrashing. Jack lunged, slicing the ropes with his knife, but the damage was done. The hunter's laugh echoed from above, eerily close. Jack fired into the mist, shots booming. The laugh faded, but the silence was worse. Emma broke free, her ankle bruised but intact. "He's hurting us," she said, her voice trembling with rage. Jack nodded, jaw clenched. The ravine was a perfect ambush spot. Another arrow fell nearby, its black fletching gleaming, with a new note, "Too late." The forest seemed to laugh with the hunter, shadows closing in. Jack grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her toward the ravine's edge. They weren't prey yet, but the hunter's labyrinth was tightening. The ravine's walls pressed in like a cage, fog swirling around Jack and Emma as they climbed the slick stones. Jack's shoulder throbbed from the arrow graze, but adrenaline pushed him onward. Emma limped, her bruised ankles slowing her, the axe gripped tight. The note, "Too late," burned in Jack's pocket, its taunt fueling his anger. The hunter's laugh echoed in his ears, closer, slicing through the pines. "He's not just hunting," Emma whispered, her voice quivering with rage and fear. "He enjoys this. Like it's personal." Jack nodded, jaw tight. The hunter's precision, the traps, the carved warnings, all pointed to someone who didn't just survive the forest but ruled it. Perhaps a former Special Forces soldier, abandoned by society, now guarding his solitude with deadly intent. His ranger instincts screamed at Jack to move, but the ravine was a funnel, designed to ensnare them. "We need to get out," he said, pointing to a steep slope where the fog thinned. "He wants us here. We don't play by his rules." Emma glanced into the shadows, her breath fogging in the cold. "What if he's waiting up there?" she asked, but she was already moving, defiance overcoming fear. They climbed, clutching roots and rocks, Jack's rifle slung behind, Emma's axe in hand. The metallic scent grew sharper, mingling with something sour, like decay. Halfway up, Jack spotted a glint, a rusted metal shard embedded in a tree, deliberate, like a marker. Nearby, an old gash, weathered by time, bore a faint name, Caleb. "Who's Caleb?" Emma whispered, barely audible. Jack shook his head, unease settling in. It could be the hunter's name, or a warning about someone who'd angered him. They pressed on, the slope steepening. The ground under Emma shifted, a soft click sounding. Jack yanked her back as a rope tautened. A log studded with spikes swung from the trees, missing by inches. It smashed into the ravine wall, shattering stone. Emma gasped, eyes wide. "He's everywhere," she said, voice breaking. Jack's heart pounded, but he forced calm. "He's not a ghost. He preps this in advance." They climbed faster, desperation mounting. At the ravine's edge, they found a clearing, but it wasn't empty. Beneath a pine stood a crude altar, animal bones, skulls, rusted military dog tags. The name Caleb Voss was etched on them. Jack's stomach turned. This wasn't just a hunter's lair, it was a grave, a monument to someone's past. A whistle cut the air, an arrow pinning Jack's sleeve to a tree. He ripped free, raising his rifle, but shadows offered no target. Emma swung her axe at nothing, her frustration erupting. "Show yourself, coward," she shouted, her voice echoing. The forest answered with a low laugh, now disturbingly close. Jack's flashlight caught a figure, tall, hooded, with a bow, eyes glinting beneath, before it vanished. The metallic scent turned rancid, blending with rot. Another arrow fell near Emma, a new note attached, "You are mine." Jack crumpled it, blood boiling. "He wants to break us," he said, pulling Emma closer. They backed from the altar, rifle and axe ready. The forest seemed to constrict, pines whispering the hunter's secrets. Caleb Voss, whoever he was, didn't just hunt, he claimed them, as if the woods demanded a sacrifice. The game was shifting, and the stakes rose beyond survival. The Great Lakes forest breathed threat, its pines whispering as Jack and Emma stumbled away from the eerie altar. The name Caleb Voss weighed on Jack, the rusted dog tags and animal bones painting a picture of a man unhinged by solitude, or worse. His shoulder burned, the arrow graze a constant reminder of the hunter's precision. Emma clutched the axe, her bruised ankle slowing her, but not her resolve. The note, "You are mine," felt like a chain tightening around them. "He's not just a hunter," Emma whispered, her voice raspy. "He's claiming us, like we're part of his sick world." Jack nodded, rifle ready, his heart racing. The metallic stench, mixed with decay, choked the air, seeping from the trees. "Probably ex-special forces," he said, piecing it together. "Lives off-grid, guarding something. Or hiding." The altar hinted at a past, maybe a soldier broken by war, now a phantom in the woods. They needed shelter, a place to regroup. Jack scanned the clearing, spotting a rocky outcrop 100 yards off, a possible hideout. "There," he said, pointing. "Move fast, stay low." They pushed through the pines, fog clinging to their clothes. Emma's limp worsened, but she gritted her teeth, keeping pace. The forest was a maze, every tree marked with gashes or arrows, like crumbs leading to doom. A low hum shattered the silence, the vibration of a bowstring. Jack shoved Emma down as an arrow whistled overhead, embedding in a tree with a thud. Its black fletching quivered, a new note tied to it, "Nowhere to hide." Emma held her breath, her eyes flaring with challenge. "He won't stop," she said, voice trembling but firm. They reached the outcrop, a shallow cave in the rock. Not much, but it offered cover. Jack barricaded the entrance with branches, while Emma checked their gear, rifle, axe, knives, and the flare, their last hope. The cave smelled of damp stone and something foul, like old blood. Jack's flashlight revealed scratches on the walls, dozens of tally marks, deeply carved. He's been here, Emma whispered, tracing them. What's he counting? Kills? Jack's gut twisted. The marks felt like a tally of victims, perhaps like them. A sharp clatter sounded outside, their tripwire from the camp, left behind. Jack peered through the branches, rifle raised. The fog swirled, revealing nothing, but a laugh rolled through, low and deliberate, circling the outcrop. Emma gripped the axe, her face pale but resolute. He knows we're here, she said. Jack nodded, jaw tight. Then we hold the line. He rigged the flare to a rock, set to ignite if the hunter approached. They crouched in the dark, the cave's walls pressing like a tomb. Another arrow struck the branches by the entrance, splintering wood. No note, just black fletching, a silent threat. The hum of a bowstring returned, closer, followed by a scrape, metal on stone. Jack's flashlight caught a glint outside, perhaps a blade or bough. Come on, you bastard, he muttered, finger on the trigger. Emma's hand shook, but the axe was high. The air grew heavier, the rot stench suffocating. A shadow shifted outside, tall and hooded, pausing beyond the branches. The hunter wasn't playing anymore, he was closing in, ready to end the game. Jack and Emma braced themselves, knowing refuge was an illusion in this forest. The damp cave walls closed in, the air thick with the stench of decay and metal as Jack and Emma huddled behind their makeshift barricade. The hunter's shadow had vanished, but his presence lingered, a predator circling its prey. Jack's rifle trembled in his hands, the graze on his shoulder flaring with each move. Emma clutched the axe, her bruised ankle throbbing, eyes darting to the branches blocking the entrance. The note, nowhere to hide, felt like a death sentence, its words echoing in the silence. He's not just hunting, Emma whispered, her voice cracking. He's breaking us, piece by piece. Jack clenched his jaw, his mind racing. Caleb Voss, the name on the dog tags, was more than a man, he was a ghost of this forest, a soldier turned phantom. The tally marks on the cave walls, the bone altar, suggested he'd done this before. He wants us to crack, Jack said quietly, but firmly. We won't give him that. We fight. Emma nodded, her fear blending with fury. They checked their gear, rifle, axe, knives, flare, but the cave felt like a trap, its walls ticking down to the hunter's next move. A soft rustle sounded outside, followed by a gentle tap. Jack peeked through the branches, his flashlight catching a glint on the ground, a medallion Emma had worn on their first hike, now lying in the dirt, its chain snapped. That's mine, she gasped, her voice trembling with violation. He was in our camp. Jack's blood ran cold. The hunter had been close, rifling through their things, leaving it as a taunt. Another tap, and an arrow with black fletching pinned a photo to a tree, a Polaroid of Jack and Emma laughing by Lake Huron, taken days ago, with red X's over their faces. We need to move, Jack said, his voice tense. The cave wasn't shelter, it was a cage. They dismantled the barricade, stepping into the foggy woods. The air grew heavy, pines looming like judges. A low hum broke the silence, the vibration of a bowstring. An arrow grazed Emma's arm, drawing blood, and she stifled a cry. Jack fired into the trees, shots ringing out uselessly. A laugh followed, now from multiple directions, as if the forest mocked them. He's everywhere, Emma said, her voice shaking but defiant. They ran, pushing through the pines, roots snagging their boots. Jack spotted a faint trail, marked by old gashes on trees. It led to a dilapidated cabin, its windows dark, roof sagging. There, he said, pointing. Emma, blood trickling from her arm, nodded. They reached the cabin, its door hanging off its hinges. Inside, the air was stale, tinged with gunpowder. Old military gear, maps, a broken radio, a compound bow, littered the floor, all marked CV. A creak sounded behind them, and Jack raised his rifle. A trapdoor in the floor gaped open, leading into darkness. Before they could react, a wire snapped, and a barbed wire net sprang up, snaring Emma's legs. She screamed, dropping the axe, blood soaking her jeans. Jack lunged, cutting the wires with his knife, but the pain in her eyes cut deeper. The hunter's laugh echoed from the trapdoor. An arrow shot up, grazing Jack's cheek. He fired into the hole, the blast deafening, but the laugh persisted. A note slid across the floor, scrawled in jagged letters, "One left." Emma, gasping, gripped Jack's hand. "He wants to split us," she whispered, voice breaking. The cabin shuddered with a low rumble, as if the forest tightened its grip. Jack pulled her close, rifle ready, but the trapdoor loomed like a maw, poised to swallow them. The hunter had tired of games, only one would survive his next move. The cabin's air was thick with dust and gunpowder, the trapdoor yawning like a grave. Jack held Emma close, her bloodied arm pressed against him, the note, "One left," crumpled in his fist. The hunter's chuckle echoed from the trapdoor, a sound that clawed at their nerves. Caleb Voss, the ghost of these woods, was done toying with them. Jack's cheek stung from the arrow's graze, his rifle steady despite the pain. Emma gripped the axe, her eyes blazing through the fear. "He wants one of us," she whispered, her voice raw but resolute. "We don't let him choose." Jack nodded, his heart pounding. The military gear scattered around, maps, a broken radio, a compound bow marked CV, told a story of a soldier who'd lost himself to the forest. The tally marks, the shrine, the name Caleb Voss, they were pieces of a man broken by war, now claiming these woods as his domain. Jack spotted a faded map on the floor, its edges torn, marked with routes and traps. "He planned this," Jack said, grabbing it. "But he's not perfect. We use this." Emma's eyes flicked to the trapdoor. "He's down there. We end this now." They moved cautiously, Jack leading with the rifle, Emma behind with the axe. The trapdoor led to a narrow tunnel, its walls damp and etched with more tally marks. The metallic stench of blood and rot was overwhelming, the air cold as death. A faint glow flickered ahead, a lantern, maybe, or a trap. Jack clutched the map, spotting a marked exit to a clearing. "He's hurting us there," he said, his voice low. Emma nodded, her jaw tight. "Then we turn it on him." The tunnel opened to a clearing ringed by pines, a crude arena lit by moonlight. Arrows stuck in the ground formed a circle, each with black fletching, like a ritual. In the center stood Caleb, a tall, hooded figure, his compound bow drawn, eyes glinting with madness. His face was scarred, one eye clouded, his voice a low growl. "You trespassed," he said, his arrow trained on Emma. "The woods demand a price." Jack raised his rifle, but Caleb was faster, an arrow grazed his hand, forcing the rifle to drop. Emma lunged, swinging the axe, but Caleb sidestepped, his movements fluid, trained. He knocked her down with a swift kick, the axe skidding across the dirt. Jack dove for the rifle, firing wildly, the shots grazing Caleb's arm. The hunter laughed, a chilling sound, and drew another arrow. "One left," he repeated, his voice a taunt. Emma scrambled for the flare in her pocket, her arm bleeding but her hand steady. She sparked it, the red light blinding Caleb for a moment. Jack tackled him, the two rolling in the dirt, fists and fury. Emma grabbed the axe, her scream echoing as she swung, catching Caleb's bow and snapping it. He roared, drawing a knife, but Jack pinned his arm, the map falling from his pocket. It showed a trap in the clearing, a hidden net rigged to drop. Emma spotted it, cutting the rope with the axe. The net fell, tangling Caleb in its ropes, his knife clattering away. Jack grabbed the rifle, aiming at Caleb's chest. "It's over," he said, his voice shaking with rage. Caleb's scarred face twisted into a grin. The woods never forget. They backed away, leaving Caleb trapped, his laughter fading as they fled the clearing. The forest was silent now, the stench of rot gone, but the pines seemed to watch. Jack and Emma reached the truck, its engine miraculously sputtering to life. They drove, the Great Lakes fading behind them, but the map, still in Jack's pocket, felt heavy. Caleb was trapped, but the woods held more secrets. They'd survived, but the hunter's shadow lingered, whispering through the trees.
If you're still here, it means the shadows didn't scare you away. Subscribe to Darkroom Narratives for more stories that linger long after the lights go out.